remember the moment like a photograph burned into my mind. The soft click of heels against the polished wooden floor, the way the chandeliers refracted the light into 1,000 shards across the ballroom, and the laughter of my wife, Elena, drifting toward me as though it belonged to someone else. She was dressed in a deep emerald gown that hugged her curves perfectly, her hair cascading over one shoulder. I had spent hours convincing myself this was just another work event, that she was simply enjoying herself with colleagues. But then I saw him. Her boss. Tall, confident. His hand extended toward her in a gesture that was supposed to be polite, professional. But the way her eyes lingered, the way she smiled, not politely, not courteously, but with a warmth reserved for intimacy, hit me like a fist to the chest. "Dance with me," he said. And she did. Froze. The music swelled, and they glided across the floor, the world around them fading into a blur of color and sound. I tried to rationalize it. Perhaps it was just the boss asking for a formal dance. But then I noticed the way Elena's fingers curved around his hand, her posture softening, her laughter brighter than it had ever been when I was nearby. I was paralyzed, watching my wife drift further away with someone who wasn't me. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her coworker Marissa, a woman I had met only a handful of times, leaning against the bar, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on Elena and the boss. A sly smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "Take me if you're going to," she whispered to herself, her words almost lost beneath the swell of music, but her meaning was clear. The words made something inside me snap. I tried to intervene, to step forward, but my legs felt heavy, glued to the floor by shock and disbelief. Elena's gaze never met mine, and with every turn, every spin, the distance between us felt insurmountable. I felt like I was watching a life I had built together disintegrate in slow motion. After the dance ended, the boss leaned in, speaking softly, and I saw the way Elena's lips curved upward, responding to words I would never hear. Her hand lingered on his arm just a second too long before she finally stepped back, and my chest ached with a hollow emptiness I couldn't name. I remember leaving that night without a word. My footsteps echoed in the empty streets as I tried to make sense of what I had witnessed. Questions swirled in my mind, each one stabbing deeper than the last. Had I ever truly known her? Did she ever feel the same way about me? Or had I been living next to a stranger all along, convincing myself that love was enough to keep her close? The next morning I tried to confront her. I stood in the kitchen, watching her sip her coffee, her hair damp from the shower, the scent of her perfume still lingering in the air. I wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but all that came out was a strangled whisper. "Why?" She looked up, startled, her eyes wide and innocent, or maybe that was just the mask she wore. "Why what? Why him?" The words trembled out of me. "Why would you dance with him like that? Laugh with him like that?" She blinked, then laughed softly, a sound that felt like a knife twisting in my chest. "It's just a dance, love. You're overreacting. Just a dance," I repeated, incredulous. "I watched you choose to glide across the floor with him, Elena. I watched you smile like he was the only person in the room. How is that just a dance?" She set her cup down and leaned against the counter, her posture casual, her expression carefully neutral. "You're reading too much into it." Marissa said something. She was joking. I didn't mean anything by it. I felt my hands shake. "You didn't mean anything. Then why did it feel like you were leaving me behind?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence that followed was more painful than any words she could have offered. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but my mind replayed every movement, every glance, every laugh. Each one screamed betrayal louder than the last. In the days that followed, the tension became unbearable. Every message on her phone, every whispered conversation with a coworker, every sudden laugh she tried to stifle in my presence felt like evidence I didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. I started to notice little things. Missed calls, subtle changes in her scent, the way she would sometimes glance at me with a shadow of guilt in her eyes before quickly composing herself. One evening I confronted her again. This time the words tumbled out without thought. "Do you want to be with him?" Her face paled, her lips parted, and she hesitated, longer than she should have. I don't know what you mean. I pressed on, my voice rising despite myself. Don't lie to me. Tell me the truth, Elena. Was it ever him? Or was it just— I paused, struggling to contain the storm inside me. Something else? She finally looked at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered. I didn't mean for it to. I stepped back, my heart hammering. It wasn't supposed to happen. Elena, I saw it. I saw the way you let it happen. She shook her head, her hands trembling. I was confused. I didn't know how to feel. The room fell silent, heavy with unspoken words and broken trust. I realized then that the person I had loved, the person I had built a life with, was capable of choices I couldn't control or understand. And in that moment I also realized something else. Love, no matter how deep, cannot survive alone. It needs trust, honesty, and respect. Things I suddenly saw were fragile, perhaps already shattered. Weeks passed, and I tried to rebuild a sense of normalcy, but every shared meal, every casual conversation, felt like walking on shards of glass. I watched her smile at me, heard her laugh in the same tone I once adored, but now it carried an echo of betrayal that I couldn't ignore. I wanted to forgive, to convince myself that it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, but the memory of that dance haunted me, a constant reminder of the distance between us. The breaking point came one night when I discovered a series of messages between Elena and Marissa. I hadn't meant to, but curiosity, suspicion, and heartbreak drove me to pick up her phone while she was asleep. The messages were innocuous at first. Banter about work, shared jokes, but then they took a darker turn. Flirtatious comments, veiled suggestions, moments of intimacy that were meant to be private. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Every lie she had tried to convince me of, every protestation of innocence, crumbled in that instant. The betrayal wasn't just about a dance or a fleeting moment. It was a pattern, a series of choices that had been happening under my nose, choices that had slowly, insidiously eroded the foundation of our marriage. The next morning, I confronted her with the messages. She didn't deny it this time. She didn't try to justify or explain. She only looked at me, eyes wide and remorseful, and whispered, "I'm sorry." And that apology was the most painful thing I had ever heard. Not because it was insufficient, though it was, but because it carried the weight of finality. It was the acknowledgement that something we had shared, something I had believed unbreakable, was now irreparably fractured. We didn't speak for days. The house felt like a mausoleum, silent except for the occasional clink of a cup or the rustle of fabric as one of us moved through the rooms. I tried to imagine a future, but every vision ended with the same bitter truth. Trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. Finally, I made the decision I had been dreading. I couldn't stay. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but because staying would be a lie. I couldn't pretend that everything was fine, that the love we once had could survive the shadow of betrayal. I packed a bag in silence, her presence a ghostly weight in the apartment. When she returned home that night, she saw the suitcase, saw the resolve in my eyes, and for the first time, I saw true regret in hers. "I never meant to hurt you," she said, her voice trembling. "I know," I replied softly. "But intent doesn't erase impact. And some wounds can't heal, not in the way we want them to." I left that night, walking into a life that felt uncertain, lonely, and raw, but also free from the constant ache of betrayal. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I couldn't remain in the shadow of someone else's choices. Months later, I saw Elena at a coffee shop, laughing with a friend, her hair catching the sunlight, her smile bright and unburdened. A part of me wanted to confront her again, to demand an explanation, or maybe just to feel the sting of what I had lost. But I didn't. I walked past her, heart heavy, yet strangely light. I had finally accepted that love, no matter how deep, sometimes ends. Not with a bang, but with a quiet, painful surrender. And in that surrender, I found something I hadn't expected. The beginning of a life where I could trust again, love again, and most importantly, honor myself. Because some dances, once witnessed, can never be forgotten, but they can teach you how to find your own rhythm again.